Number 1. The hidden layer beneath the whip crack. In the summer of 1981, a fedora-wearing archaeologist with a bullwhip and a smirk stormed into theaters and rewrote the rules of adventure cinema. Raiders of the Lost Ark didn't just launch a franchise, it forged a new cinematic language, one where action, myth, and moral ambiguity collided at breakneck speed. But what if I told you that beneath the iconic boulder chase, the snake pit, and the Nazi melting finale lies a film stitched together by desperation, compromise, and a quiet rebellion against studio expectations? What if the real treasure wasn't the Ark, but the hidden choices that made it immortal? What if everything you thought you knew about Indiana Jones, the effortless charm, the flawless timing, the mythic certainty, was actually the product of exhaustion, injury, and last-minute improvisation? What if the film's enduring power comes not from its perfection, but from its imperfections? Let's pull back the curtain on the production that almost didn't happen, the injuries that nearly derailed it, and the creative gambles that reshaped Hollywood. Let's uncover what really happened behind the scenes of a film that feels effortless, but was anything but. Because the detail that changes how you see Raiders of the Lost Ark isn't in the script. It's in the sweat, the silence, and the stubborn vision of a few people who refuse to play it safe. Number 2. Origins in a Hollywood crossfire. The late 1970s were a strange, uncertain time for American cinema. After the gritty realism of Taxi Driver, the operatic tragedy of The Godfather, and the existential dread of Apocalypse Now, studios were desperate for something new, something that could capture the magic of Star Wars without copying it outright. George Lucas, fresh off his space opera triumph in 1977, had long nursed a love for 1930s serials like Flash Gordon, Zorro's Fighting Legion, and Dick Tracy. He dreamed of a modern pulp hero, a globe-trotting adventurer who fought Nazis, cracked wise, and always got the girl, all while uncovering lost relics and outrunning ancient curses. But Lucas knew he couldn't direct it himself. His hands were full with Star Wars sequels and the burgeoning industrial light and magic empire. He needed someone who could translate his nostalgic vision into kinetic, grounded cinema, someone who understood both spectacle and humanity. Enter Steven Spielberg, fresh from Jaws, 1975, and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, 1977. Spielberg was Hollywood's golden boy, but also its most scrutinized. After the costly delays and mixed reception of 1941, 1979, his reputation teetered on the edge. Studios whispered that he'd lost his touch. Lucas offered him Raiders as a palate cleanser, a fast, lean, $18-20 million picture shot in under 3 months across 3 continents. For Spielberg, it was a chance to prove he could deliver on time and on budget. For Lucas, it was a passion project, finally getting its moment. And for Paramount Pictures, it was a gamble. Adventure films were considered passé, relics of a bygone era. The script, co-written by Lawrence Kasdan from Lucas's story, was packed with exotic locales, supernatural stakes, and a morally gray protagonist who drank, lied, shot first, and rarely explained himself. Filming began on June 23, 1980, in La Rochelle, France, a location chosen not for historical accuracy, but because it was cheap, available, and resembled a generic European port. The studio wanted a B-movie, the creators wanted a classic. That tension would define every frame, every casting choice, every line of dialogue. The film was born not in comfort, but in constraint, and it's that pressure that forged its brilliance. Number 3. The Persona Paradox. Indiana Jones is cool, calm, and unflappable, right? Watch him again. He's actually exhausted, bruised, and perpetually on the edge of collapse. Harrison Ford, already famous as Han Solo in Star Wars, was deeply reluctant to take another iconic role. He worried about typecasting, about becoming a caricature of his own swagger. In interviews from the time, he admitted he didn't want to be the guy with the hat and the whip for the rest of my life. But Ford saw something deeper in Indy, a man whose competence masked vulnerability, whose cynicism hid idealism. He insisted on playing Jones not as a superhero, but as a professor who happened to be good in a fight, someone who winced when he got punched, who got seasick on boats, who lost more fights than he won. This wasn't just acting. It was a quiet rebellion against the era's muscle-bound action heroes. While Arnold Schwarzenegger was flexing in Conan the Barbarian, 1982, and Sylvester Stallone was punching his way through Rocky III's, 1982, Ford gave us a hero who relied on brains, luck, and sheer stubbornness. The studio pushed for more bravado, more quips, more invincibility. Ford pushed back. He famously ad-libbed the now legendary moment in Cairo where Indy, instead of dueling a sword-wielding assassin in an elaborate choreographed sequence, simply pulls out his gun and shoots him. It wasn't just funny, it was a statement. This hero doesn't have time for spectacle. He's tired. He's in pain. He just wants to get the job done. Ford suffered a herniated disc during filming in Tunisia, requiring daily painkillers, physical therapy, and frequent injections just to stand upright. The cost behind the glow was real, and that weariness you see in his eyes during the submarine sequence or the desert chase? It wasn't acting. It was the price of making magic look easy. The paradox is this: the more human Indy appears, the more mythic he becomes. His flaws don't diminish him, they elevate him, and that's why, decades later, he still feels real. Number 4. The decision that changed everything. Early drafts of Raiders of the Lost Ark featured a much darker, more mystical Indiana. Jones, one who communed with spirits, deciphered ancient prophecies, and even wielded supernatural artifacts himself. In one discarded sequence, Indy used a sacred dagger to open a portal to another dimension. But Spielberg and Lucas made a pivotal creative choice: strip away the mysticism from Indy and keep it solely with the Ark. Make him a skeptic, a man of science, who stumbles into the divine. This decision grounded the film in human stakes, making the supernatural finale all the more jarring and powerful. But the real turning point came even earlier: the casting. Tom Selleck was originally cast as Indiana Jones. He had the look, the charm, the mustache, and the rugged TV star appeal. He even did costume tests in the now iconic leather jacket and fedora. But his commitment to the CBS television series Magnum P.I., ironically, another iconic role that would define his career, forced him to drop out just weeks before principal photography began. The network refused to release him, citing contractual obligations. Enter Harrison Ford, who had worked with Spielberg on American Graffiti, 1973, and with Lucas on Star Wars, 1977. His casting wasn't just convenient, it was transformative. Ford brought a dry wit, emotional restraint, and a world-weary intelligence that Selleck, for all his charisma, might not have matched. Ford understood irony. He knew how to underplay a moment, so it landed harder. He turned Indy from a two-dimensional pulp throwback into a three-dimensional man haunted by his own choices. Paramount executives initially balked at Ford, calling him too old at 38 and too familiar after Star Wars. They feared audiences would see Han Solo in the fedora. But Lucas stood firm. He told Spielberg, "If we can't get Ford, we don't make the movie." That single decision, replacing a TV star with a movie star who understood subtext, shifted the tone from earnest pulp to self-aware myth. It didn't just change the lead, it changed the genre. Adventure films would never be the same. Number 5. On-set reality. Check. Tunisia in summer is hell. Temperatures regularly soared past 120 degrees, 49 degrees. Sand infiltrated cameras, costumes, and lungs. Crew members passed out from heat stroke. Spielberg, determined to stay on schedule and avoid the budget overruns that plagued 1941, pushed through 16-hour days, often sleeping in his trailer between setups. The famous desert truck chase sequence, where Indy pursues a Nazi convoy across the dunes, was shot on unpaved roads so rough that stuntmen suffered concussions, broken ribs, and spinal injuries. One crew member later recalled, "We weren't making a movie, we were surviving one." Then there were the snakes. Hundreds of them. Real ones. Ford, who famously hated snakes, had to film the Well of Souls scene surrounded by pythons, cobras, and vipers. The production team assured him they were devenomed, but Ford didn't believe them, and neither did the audience. His genuine fear sold the scene. Spielberg later admitted they used a mix of real and rubber snakes, but the close-ups of Ford's face? All real terror. During the fight on the Nazi submarine, Ford tore a knee ligament and re-aggravated his herniated disc. He finished the scene on crutches, hidden just off camera, and relied on stand-ins for wide shots. Budgets were tight, insurance was minimal, and reshoots weren't an option. Every take had to count. There was no luxury of, "We'll fix it in post." The result? A film that feels urgent because it was urgent. There was no safety net, only momentum, grit, and the shared belief that they were making something special. Even the iconic boulder sequence, shot on a soundstage in England, was a nightmare of logistics. The 300-pound fiberglass boulder kept veering off its track, nearly crushing stuntman Vic Armstrong, who also doubled for Ford in many scenes. Spielberg insisted on practical effects over opticals, believing audiences could sense the difference between real danger and digital illusion. That commitment to physicality is why the sequence still thrills. You can feel the weight, the speed, the impossibility of escape. Number 6. What most fans miswatch the opening sequence again, the temple, the booby traps, the golden idol. Notice how Indy steps over the pressure plate, not on it. He's not just lucky, he's studied. This isn't a treasure hunter. It's a scholar who's done his homework. The film never spells it out, but every trap he avoids is based on real archaeological logic. The darts? Inspired by Incan temple defenses? The collapsing floor? Echoes of Mayan engineering. The filmmakers consulted real archaeologists to ensure the traps felt plausible, not cartoonish. Now look at Marion Ravenwood's introduction. She's drunk, defiant, and dealing with men twice her age in a Nepalese bar. But notice how Spielberg frames her. Low angles, centered in the shot, commanding the room. She's not a damsel. She's the only person who can match Indy's wit and will. Later, when she's tied up in the Nazi camp, she doesn't wait to be rescued. She picks the lock with a hairpin, steals a Nazi uniform, and walks out unnoticed. The film trusts her competence without fanfare. Karen Allen's performance is layered, vulnerable, yet fierce, wounded, yet unbroken. She's not just the girl. She's Indy's equal in every way that matters. And the arc itself? It's never shown opening in full. The camera cuts away just as the light erupts from within. Why? Because Spielberg knew the real horror wasn't the visual. It was the sound. The screams, the wind, the silence after. He let your imagination do the work. That restraint, hiding the most powerful object in the story, is what makes it feel sacred, not silly. In an era of CGI overload, this choice feels radical. Sometimes what you don't show is more powerful than what you do. Even the score holds secrets. John Williams's Ark theme uses a mix of Middle Eastern scales and choral harmonies to evoke both ancient mystery and divine judgment. But listen closely during the warehouse scene. The music drops out entirely. The silence is deafening. It's not just a budget choice, it's thematic. The Ark is no longer music, it's bureaucracy. It's forgotten, and that silence speaks louder than any orchestra ever could. Number 7. The conflict Paramount wanted a straightforward action flick. Clear heroes, clear villains, clear stakes. Lucas and Spielberg wanted a film that questioned the very idea of ownership, of artifacts, of history, of truth. The studio pushed for more romance, more explosions, a clearer moral compass. The filmmakers pushed back, insisting on ambiguity. Indy fails to protect the Ark, the U.S. government locks it away in a warehouse for study, and the real villains aren't just Nazis, they're bureaucrats who treat sacred objects as inventory. There was also tension over tone. Early test screenings confused audiences. Was this a comedy? A horror film? A war movie? A spiritual allegory? Spielberg refused to simplify it. He doubled down on the genre blending, trusting that audiences could handle complexity. If they can follow Star Wars, they can follow this, he reportedly told nervous executives. He believed in the intelligence of the viewer, a rare stance in an industry increasingly obsessed with spoon-feeding. The studio demanded cuts to the melting faces scene, calling it too grotesque and un-American. Spielberg agreed to trim a few seconds, but kept the core intact. He knew the horror wasn't gratuitous, it was theological. The Ark doesn't kill, it judges. And in a post-Vietnam, post-Watergate America, that message resonated deeply. Some powers shouldn't be wielded by men, no matter how righteous they claim to be. The scene is a warning, not just a spectacle. Even the ending sparked debate. Why not let Indy keep the Ark? Why not have him place it in a museum, as he promised? Because the film's thesis is that institutions corrupt. The government isn't better than the Nazis. They're just quieter about their greed. That final shot, a slow zoom into an endless sea of identical crates in a Nevada warehouse, isn't a punchline. It's a lament. And it's one of the most subversive endings in blockbuster history. Number 8. The irony. The greatest irony of Raiders of the Lost Ark is this. It became the very thing it mocked. Indy spends the entire film chasing an artifact he believes belongs in a museum, where it can be studied and appreciated. But the U.S. government buries it in a warehouse, lost among thousands of identical crates. The final image is a visual metaphor for institutional indifference, for the erasure of meaning in the name of bureaucracy. And yet, Hollywood spent the next 4 decades doing the exact same thing to the film's legacy. Studios chased its formula, bigger stunts, louder heroes, clearer morals, while missing its soul. They made action movies about adventure, not with it. They gave us heroes who never bled, never doubted, never lost. Meanwhile, Raiders itself faded into the background, treated as a relic rather than a revelation. A classic to be referenced, not revisited. And then there's Harrison Ford. He took the role to avoid being typecast and became indelibly linked to Indiana Jones for life. The irony no one saw coming? He'd spend the next 40 years both embracing and resisting the character, even lobbying to kill him off in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, 2023. The man who saved the Ark couldn't escape it. The persona became the prison. And in a strange echo of the film's theme, Ford himself became a cultural artifact, stored away, occasionally dusted off, but never truly understood. Even the film's creation mirrors its story. A group of passionate individuals racing against time, battling institutions, and trying to preserve something sacred in a world that doesn't value it. The Ark was lost, the film was almost lost. And yet, both endure, not because they were perfect, but because they were human. Number 9. The breakthrough Raiders of the Lost Ark opened on June 12, 1981, and immediately dominated the box office. It earned $384 million worldwide, more than Star Wars in its initial theatrical run, and became the highest-grossing film of the year. Critics hailed it as pure cinema, with the New York Times calling it a masterpiece of narrative economy and visual storytelling. Audiences returned week after week, not just for the action, but for the rhythm, the wit, the sense that every frame had been crafted with love. It won 5 Academy Awards: Best Art Direction, Best Film Editing, Best Visual Effects, Best Sound, and a Special Achievement Award for Sound Effects Editing, and was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Original Screenplay. But its real breakthrough was cultural. Phrases like snakes, why did it have to be snakes? And it's not the years, honey, it's the mileage entered the global lexicon. The boulder chase became shorthand for any sudden, overwhelming threat. And the image of Indy silhouetted against the sunset, whip in hand, became an icon of modern myth-making. More importantly, it redefined what blockbusters could be. It proved that spectacle and intelligence weren't mutually exclusive, that a film could be fast, funny, and profound all at once. Directors from James Cameron, The Terminator, Aliens, to J.J. Abrams, Mission Impossible, Star Trek, cite it as their North Star. Even Pixar's Up and Indiana Jones and The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, for better or worse, owe debts to its structure. The film didn't just entertain, it inspired a generation of storytellers to aim higher, dig deeper, and never underestimate their audience. Number 10. Ripple effects. The success of Raiders of the Lost Ark didn't just spawn sequels, it reshaped Hollywood's entire playbook. Suddenly, every studio wanted a high-concept adventure with a flawed hero, exotic locales, a ticking clock, and a MacGuffin that held the fate of the world. Romancing the Stone, 1984. The Goonies, 1985. The Mummy, 1999. National Treasure, 2004. All owe direct debts to Indy's blueprint. Even animated films like The Road to El Dorado, 2000, echo its structure. Reluctant heroes, ancient secrets, and a race against villains who don't understand what they're stealing. For Spielberg, it cemented his status as a master storyteller who could balance art and commerce without compromise. For Lucas, it validated his belief in mythic storytelling as a commercial force. For Ford, it gave him a second iconic role, but also a cage he'd spent decades trying to escape, turning down Indiana Jones projects for years before reluctantly returning. And for audiences, it gave us a new kind of hero, one who wasn't perfect, who didn't always win cleanly, who questioned the mission even as he pursued it. In an age of infallible superheroes with CGI invincibility, Indy's humanity feels more radical than ever. We still quote him, cosplay him, and name our dogs after him, not because he's invincible, but because he's not. He gets hurt. He makes mistakes. He walks away, limping. And that's why we believe in him. Even today, when a filmmaker wants to show a character's intelligence, they have them solve a physical puzzle under pressure, just like Indy in The Temple. When a story needs moral ambiguity, they echo the Ark's judgment. Power reveals character. Raiders didn't just influence films, it influenced how we tell stories. Number 11. Why it endures. So why does Raiders of the Lost Ark still thrill us more than 40 years later? It's not just the stunts or the score, though John Williams's theme remains one of cinema's greatest compositions. It's because the film understands a fundamental truth. Adventure isn't about finding treasure, it's about losing yourself in the search. Indy doesn't save the world. He barely saves himself. But he stands up for something larger than himself, the idea that history matters, that knowledge is sacred, that some things shouldn't be owned. In a world increasingly obsessed with control, possession, and instant gratification, that message feels quietly revolutionary. The Ark isn't a weapon, it's a mirror, and those who look into it see their true selves, flaws, greed, and all. And that's the hidden layer most fans never figured out. Raiders isn't a celebration of conquest. It's a lament for what gets lost along the way. The Ark, yes, but also innocence, certainty, and the belief that heroes always win. It didn't shout, it endured. And now, with fresh eyes, you can see it. Every bruise, every compromise, every silent act of defiance that turned a summer movie into a timeless mirror. The film's power lies not in its perfection, but in its humanity. And that's why it will outlive us all. Number 12. Rewatch with fresh eyes. Next time you watch Raiders of the Lost Ark, don't just see the boulder or the whip. See the exhaustion in Ford's eyes, the sand in the camera lens, the quiet rebellion in every frame. Notice how Indy never boasts, never poses, never claims victory. He just keeps moving forward, battered but unbowed. Ask yourself, what would you have done if you'd found the Ark? Would you have tried to control it, or let it remain a mystery? Leave a comment below. What's the one detail you noticed only on your 10th viewing? Was it the way Marion's eyes narrow when she lies? The subtle tremor in Indy's hand after the fight with Toht? The fact that the Ark is never truly lost again? It's just forgotten? If this look behind the curtain gave you a new appreciation for the film, don't forget to like this video, because some stories deserve to be rediscovered again and again with fresh eyes and open hearts.